Well, the national birth rate has dropped to its lowest level in almost 2 decades. New data from KPMG showed just over 289,000 babies were born across Australia in 2023. That's the lowest number since 2006, and it's believed cost of living pressures are having an impact. Professor Udoy Saikia is a social demographer from Flinders University, and he joins me now from Adelaide. Hi there, Udoy. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon.
Now
Thanks for having me.
Not at all. We heard a couple of reasons there as to why this birth rate might be falling, cost of living crisis being one of them. It's fallen to 4.6%, the lowest in 2 decades. Why do you think it's where it's at?
Before I start the conversation, I'd like to clarify that Australia is not the exceptional country for the birth rate, falling of birth rate. It is having worldwide. Even in the developing countries, the birth rate is declining and declining in each and every country in the world. So that will continue. And Australia, in fact, had that decline in demography. We call it below replacement level fertility, which we achieved in 1976. So below replacement level is below 2.1 total fertility rate. So it is not a very kind of exceptional factor. It is happening everywhere, and it is happening in Australia as well.
Sure. So why do you think it's happening, albeit everywhere, but what are the factors in Australia?
In Australia, I mean, some of the factors are very much similar to the universal factors. That trend has been, and sociological theory says, once people get into the mindset of not having too many babies, it is very difficult to go back to have the higher fertility. In Australian case, historically, yes, it is women's education, women's empowerment is the biggest contributor for initially to start with the falling birth rate, but increasingly it is the economic factors and also the opportunities, which is kind of having a big impact on not having many babies.
Sure. So what is the impact of a falling fertility rate on the economy, on productivity?
Especially on economy, while the falling fertility or declining in population, a lot of people say it is good for the environment, but at the same time, the economic implications cannot be that good because, when the fertility or the birth rate falls, we need to remember how the age structure changes in a population. So as a result of the declining birth rate, what happens in the future, and it's already happening, is the population in the economically productive age group, which is 15 to 65, it becomes smaller compared to aging population. So as a result of that, there are a lot of kind of economic burden on the economically productive age group. So the aging becomes more and more. At the same time, the economically productive age group becomes smaller. And we have to rely quite a lot for the workers on our migration from overseas.
And migration, we know where that's going as well and how it's feeding into all of that. You mentioned this is happening the world over. I might just quote you, in France, President Macron has said a national strength lies in its ability to generate a dynamic birth rate. He launched a campaign to demographically rearm France. They spend about 3.5% to 4% of its GDP on family policies each year. We know that the Treasury here wants us to have more babies, but has ruled out a Peter Costello-style baby bonus. What policies work?
It is very difficult to pinpoint what policies work. I do not think, and there will be any effective policy that will lead to high fertility in any country. Because, as you said, in France, it is happening in developing countries as well. Countries like Bangladesh, countries like Iran, it is a fertility crisis because the birth rate is so low. So I do not have a very clear answer which can say that, okay, this particular policy will increase the birth rate. It can be a short-term policy which will probably have some incentives to have more babies, but I don't think so in long term that will work.
Yeah.
Society has moved in a direction where they are not ready for having any more babies, whatever incentive it is.
Yeah, we know that paid parental leave exists, maternity leave, generous childcare subsidies, etc. But I believe Israel and some Nordic countries are bucking the trend. Are you aware of that and aware of what policies they're using there?
It is some kind of incentive policies they are doing it. But what I am trying to say that can work probably for a short term. it will have, I mean, when go back to the Peter Costello's policy, he claimed that it increased Australia's babies in a particular couple of years by 10,000. And he claims that it worked for some time, but after that, it never worked, and the policy is no more there. So anywhere, any policies, I believe, will be a very short-term impact, and in the long term, as a demographer, I can tell you that it's not going to work. I don't think so. People will go back to have more babies.
Interesting, you say it's in the mindset there. Professor Udoy Saikia from Flinders University, thank you so much for your time.